In the beginning, there was the word, or rather, at first, someone came up with the idea to make a television series about an ordinary person with no political experience who became the president of Ukraine, and an amazing president of Ukraine. Of course, the idea wasn't new. I mean, well, remember the movie Dave, right? The owner of a small employment agency becomes the president's double and demonstrates the idea that an ordinary and unprepared person, of course, he's a good person, he might become a better leader than the elected and supposedly vetted president. In the series Designated Survivor, so, well, chosen, appointed survivor, I don't know how exactly to say it. So, someone who went from being a university professor to becoming the president of the United States, who handles all the challenges of governance, asteroids, so much that it makes your ears ring. In order to get people used to the idea of a woman president, television series like Commander-in-Chief were created specifically for Hillary Clinton. So that's the one with Gina Davis as vice president, with Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and then just straight up, Madam, what did they call her? Secretary of State, yes, that's with Téa Leoni. So someone in Ukraine said this. Ronald Reagan hosted a radio show and turned his presidential loss in 1976 into a win in 1980, largely because people got used to listening to him, that he understood the problems and saw ways to solve them. I don't know. So at first they tried to make servant of the people, and then they said, maybe. Or did they first come up with how to sell the people this absolutely new person from a different background, so to speak, and then came up with the series and approved, well, Zelensky? I'm inclined to think that Kolomoisky, who denies it, came up with it himself, and then he started looking for someone who could step into those shoes, take on that role, and found the talented, intelligent, and completely non-ambitious Zelensky. I think Zelensky was told, win or lose, here's $50 or even $100 million for you. Maybe it wasn't a big deal to put it in some digital account somewhere in Switzerland, or maybe in the Cayman Islands or some other islands. But even if you lose, you'll become a hero of Ukraine. Kolomoisky denied Kolomoisky's role, but maybe it was because of the rather fresh memories of Berezovsky, who apparently was hanged in his bathroom in London for exactly this reason. So Boris Abramovich not only said that he came up with this idea, but also brought Vovka to Yumashev and then convinced Yeltsin. So he specifically chose Putin and developed a scenario sort of how to do it. So I want to say right away, I want to add that Putin was also guided by the head of the 5th Directorate of the KGB. This is ideological counterintelligence, the fight against ideological sabotage, and the fight against us, the dissidents. A man named Philip Denisovich Bobkov. He later became the first deputy director of the KGB and then went to work for Gusinsky. So, either that or on the contrary, Gusinsky was heading something that actually belonged to the KGB. So, Bobkov came up with the idea of merging the KGB with criminal groups, and having proven the brilliance of his idea with the experience in St. Petersburg, he confirmed that Putin could, well, let's say, do the same thing on a national scale. So Putin was led by Berezovsky, whom Vova later killed, and Zelensky was led by Kolomoisky, whom this Vova imprisoned but left alive. So you see, one Vova is better, the other Vova is worse. But Kolomoisky never said that he was responsible for wrapping Zelensky in a nice, shiny package. But considering that the television series Servant of the People was aired on Kolomoisky's television company and channel, the Servant of the People Party means supposedly the servant of the supposed People Party. That's what I was trying to say. It received funding through a complex network of offshore companies, and according to what's claimed, there's an organization called the Pandora Archive. Significant amounts were transferred from Kolomoisky's private bank naturally into these offshore accounts and so on. The investigation by Sledstv Info mentions $41 million transferred from private bank through offshore accounts to Zelensky's team, but I suspect that Well, as the saying goes, whoever buys her dinner gets to dance with her, right? And that's why Kolomoisky's people were placed in strategic positions, so the boy wouldn't get carried away. Well, for example, there's Andrei Bodin or Bodin, yes. Kolomoisky's lawyer became the head of the president's office and was kind of the main conduit of Kolomoisky's will. Alexander Danilyuk, who became the secretary of the National Security and Defense Council. About defense, yes, Ruslan Ryaboshapka, who became the prosecutor general then, Alexei Goncharuk, an economist, a young man who was appointed as prime minister. How did it happen that suddenly, one after another, Kolomoisky's people started to lose their positions? And as a manager, Andrei Yermak came to Zelensky, along with people who were called either Yermak's team or Zelensky's team. And probably, it seemed that just as Putin once freed himself from Berezovsky and oligarchic dependence, Zelensky also carried out an internal coup and assembled his own team. But if that's the case, then he is personally responsible for robbing the country and the people. And you can't even call him someone's wind-up puppet. If that's the case, then Zelensky is at the head of that bandit rampage, which is already is happening in Ukraine. Well, so to speak, I would say it's very similar to the Russian scheme. In Russia, too, in the year 2000, there was such an oligarchic organization, a society, but Putin managed to create a post-oligarchic system with one sort of main bandit. Well, it seems like he is, so to speak. Yes. We don't really have any other ideas, yes. It seems like he really is, which means he's sitting at the very top of the pyramid, so that's him. The others are either killed or in exile, or killed in exile, or they pay tribute to the biggest guy. And when necessary, they also open up their wallets and storehouses for the needs of the super bandits sitting in the Kremlin. By the time Zelensky came to power, Ukrainian society also existed on the balance of the gangs of Akhmetov, Pinchuk, Lomoisky, Petro Poroshenko, Yatsenko, Firtash. I don't know, there was Zhivago and others, but I can't recall all the names. But with the arrival of Zelensky's group, the assets of President Andrei Spyka, Kirill Budanov, Denis Shevchenko, Shamahal, Andrei Yermak, Vitaly Klitschko, Mikhail Podolyak, Rustam Umarov, and, let's be honest, Oksana Markarova, started growing like yeast. Despite the scandals and confirmation of widespread looting of the population and the army, none of the major players were punished. The message was basically, stay loyal and you're safe. The one whom the Speaker of the United States Congress demanded be removed from the Ukrainian embassy and sent away in all directions, which absolutely infuriated the Americans. There has never been such a precedent. She wasn't fired or transferred, she was promoted. And now she is an advisor to the president on issues of Ukraine's reconstruction and investments. She essentially assumed or was given the Council of Ministers functions, more or less. So that means the person the United States will have to work with once peace is established. Well, if Zelensky and his team allow peace to be established, of course. And that's the same Oksana they were asked to kick the hell out of the United States of America. Nice, well done, Zelensky, just well done. So Zelensky has been president since May 20, 2019. He doesn't do anything to somehow strengthen Ukraine, which was already clear to the whole world that Russia would attack soon. No one knew exactly when, but it was obvious that an attack would happen. In fact, Russia had already attacked. What do you mean, soon? They had already seized 15% of the territory, but it was clear they were planning to take even more. Nothing is being done to strengthen the country from an industrial standpoint. Maybe the lightweight believes that the whole world will rush to save him. Well, he should have looked at Crimea and Donbass. How can you believe after that someone will come to help you? Do you have any common sense, Vasya? That's it. In 2022, the attack was carried out, the first assault failed, and Russia was ready to sign a peace agreement. Zelensky refuses to sign it. Yes, he was advised. So both his own people and outsiders advised him, but he was elected to lead, not to obey foreigners. Well, there were uncles, aunts, and his own well-wishers. For Zelensky's team, Ukraine wasn't first. For them, something else turned out to be first. Money, power, buddies, parties, I don't know what. So for him, the will of the people brought him to power because he played the piano well with his private parts. And suddenly that's it. I'm not even sure he himself understood what he was doing. It always seemed to him that he was on stage, pretending to be foolish Americans. Foolish Poroshenko, foolish Timoshenko, and giggling foolish Kolomoisky. Well, actually, by the way, Kolomoisky did turn out to be foolish. I mean, let's put it this way, of course he's not stupid, but he's not very smart either. Did he really think he could manipulate the president however he wanted, without having documentary proof of some terrible and dirty crime committed, say, by Zelensky? So you hand him an axe, put a person in front of him, tell him to chop, and film it with 5 cameras. By the way, I'm sure that Yumashiev, before nominating Putin, gave him an axe, a knife, or a saw and made him kill at least one little girl in front of the camera, and then dismember her and put the pieces into cake boxes. And the intellectual Kolomoisky, unlike the less significantly intellectual Yumashiev, relied on a word, on decency, on shared plans, and on a measly $50, maybe $100 million. But when you're still before the presidency, when you're searching before becoming president, that's a huge amount of money. But when you're president, it's a measly sum. You put it in a secret bank account. So what? 50 million, that's just a day's earnings. A fool basically means a parrot or a fool. So, 3.5 years of war, 400,000 dead, trillions in destruction, 10 million displaced people, of which 7 million have left the country, and half the country is wounded, crippled, shell-shocked, and with ruined lives, and tens or even hundreds of billions in stolen funds, or property, not just money. They'll have to answer for that too, and it's the same horror. The Americans agreed. Full amnesty for everyone who did anything during the war. But Ukrainian society decided that this meant forgiving Russian war criminals, and they rose up in protest. Something completely different was meant. Zelensky meant something else entirely, amnesty for himself and his team. Here they are, Zelensky and Yermak's gang. Yermak went to the front with his entire security detail, of course, in jeeps with cognac. Some of them like tequila, so they brought it. And there, he's not listed in any unit, meaning he doesn't report to anyone. But National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine won't come there. They'll be shot there, and they'll say it was the Russians who suddenly showed up and killed everyone. And while sitting somewhere there, frantic calls from the traitor coming in. I'll give this for that guarantee and $1 billion more for this. Well, $1 billion isn't in hryvnias, gentlemen. Who's counting hryvnias there? Well, Z himself is sitting on a powder keg. Subtitles, he's sitting. There will be a truce. We need to hold elections. Wiggy 2. And this scary word that starts with a V makes them all incredibly nervous. And what if they can't rig it? After all, there's a chance they won't be able to rig it. With Trump, he might just send in a division of auditors. What then? So what now? Will they pick the one they planted? And he might not sign the pardon for all sins because he's upset about his brother. And the girl with the braid won't sign either. Well, actually, the girl with the braid will first take everything you've gathered through hard thievery and then, well, whose will she sign? Whose won't she sign? She has 7 quarters in a week. Those are the Thursdays. Poroshenko, too, if he comes, he has a couple of teeth on Z. Or more than a couple. I doubt anyone will promote the boxer for the elections. Although maybe only Firtash will join forces with Pinchuk, but they've already witnessed a betrayal with Zelensky by Kolomoisky, so they might just wait. Here we are. I'm not like that. I'm waiting for the tram, that's it. So Putin's story with Sobchak doesn't inspire them. That's quite convenient. Sobchak died of an illness he never had. But anything can happen. Anything can happen in this world. Even an old woman can make a mistake. What is a mistake, you may ask? Let me explain. It's a failure, a pitfall, a blunder, a misfortune. But in this particular case, a mistake means an unexpected conception. Sobchak knew too much and Rook conceived. A lot more people in Russia jumped out of windows. Well, completely, absolutely of their own free will, they just walked up to the windows and ran up and jumped out. Well, naturally from the upper floors, who jumps out from the second floor? For the sake of truth, I want to say that 84 people from Bill Clinton's close circle either committed suicide or also flew like free birds from the upper floors of high-rise buildings. Not from finished buildings, but construction sites or, if necessary, extreme cases. By the way, we still don't know if anyone climbed up here. Well, in extreme cases, someone shot them in the woods, blew up their planes, or crashed dump trucks into their cars. And one even committed suicide with 2 shots to the back of the head. He thought one was enough. Sorry, I can't help but laugh. It seemed like too little. He would have fired a 3rd shot, but the soldier's hand was too tired to shoot. Okay, well, so as not to offend Ukraine, Denis Kiryev was killed because he warned Budanov about the upcoming landing. Continuation. Made it in time. Russia in Kyiv. Was it V next? On his... happiness, the security service of Ukraine that arrested him for alleged treason, so which country did he betray? Yes, in response to her statement, despite the statement from the main intelligence directorate, yes, the main intelligence directorate, of course, yes, the Ministry of Defense, that he was their agent who carried out special missions, so they lost him somewhere. And when he was found on the street, there was a bullet in his forehead, yes, fired from close range. They took him away in a jeep and then he disappeared. And when he got out on the road, and who killed him, we don't know. If Zelensky isn't elected, there will be trials. And if he is elected, there will be vigilante justice. The end of the war without a clear and visible victory is like a sharp knife to Putin. He will be destroyed, Vladimir Vladimirovich. And 700,000 angry and wild people who have nowhere to earn a living will return to the country. The end of the war without a visible victory is a sharp knife to Zelensky. He will be destroyed. And the country will be filled with hatred, with people full of hate. People who hate the authorities, Russia and Russian speakers. And of course, as always, we Jews are also lucky. Russia is using its own resources, while Ukraine relies on others. Russia prepared and was building up its military-industrial complex, while Ukraine's leadership was stealing everything it could, and at the same time they were giggling about how smart they were and how stupid the Moscows were. You can only put pressure on Russia with sanctions. It's easier to put pressure on Ukraine, fight with your own resources, and Ukraine got caught as soon as it happened. Well, not just as soon as, but still. There will be a little more time. Yes, Zelensky, who didn't run away in 22, will definitely run away in 20. Silliman to a pre-prepared piece of land Silliman bought for about 200 millions. Well, imagine that Zelensky can live like a normal person, not just anybody. Barack Obama in his small estate worth $15 million. By the way, recently the chef drowned, who it turns out was writing a book about what goes on at Obama's house. But he didn't finish it, he drowned. Or maybe he committed suicide. In general, we're on the final stretch. I mean House of Cards, of course. And also the saga of the rise and fall of Vladimir Vladimirovich, our blue sun. The fall maybe like a stone or maybe like a glider. You know, down, down, we rush our wings in a steep dive, but we rush down. That's it, you know. I've always found it amazing that a chicken can still run and flap its wings for a while after its head is cut off, but it's no longer. I have a feeling that we're somewhere at the stage of running around the yard, or maybe right before the head gets chopped off. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, ladies and gentlemen, and become a sponsor. We give sponsors $1 for a month or more. If you want additional interesting content, you won't regret it.